Well, good afternoon, everyone. You have tuned into Friday at 4, Vermont Daily Chronicle TV. I'm here. My name is Guy Page. I'm the editor of the Vermont Daily Chronicle. I'm here with our co-host and engineer, Paul Bean. How you doing, Paul?
Very well, thanks, Guy.
All right. So this is the last Friday at 4
There's been one more.
before the election.
Oh, okay.
The kid's always finishing my sentences.
I'm sorry.
Mom, make him stop. Okay, yes. So it's the last Friday at 4. So this is our election review. And we have a lot of news.
Yeah.
And some of it is sobering. Some of it might be encouraging. But it's news.
One thing I just want to say quickly, folks, if there is any technical issues out there, if you can't hear us or you can't see us or you think there's something wrong, feel free to write in the chat. You can comment below just like you would on anything else on social media. Just write in the chat below, let us know, because we're pretty sure things are good, but we're relatively new to the studio still, so I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So
yes, we are at 802 Scoop Studios. Thank you very much, Raylene Mounier and Michael Boutin, for the use of this studio. We're on Main Street in Barrie. We're very grateful. It's our second week, as Paul said. So, Paul, I think we don't have the phone thing.
No, we don't have the phone thing yet. We're in work in progress. We've communicated with the team, and we're trying to make that happen. So you cannot call in this week, but you can comment to be part of the conversation, and that is what we're all about. Here at Vermont Daily Chronicle, we want you to be part of the conversation. So if you have questions or you want to chime in, feel free to write in the chat. We do have a lot of stuff to cover today, but we're always open to taking the conversation in different directions. So,
right.
So definitely don't hesitate to do that. But I'll send it back to you, Guy.
Okay, thanks. So, a lot of news, but really the biggest story this week, Paul, I think, was the endorsement of Lieutenant Governor candidate Republican nominee John Rogers by none other than former Democratic Governor Peter Shumlin. No one was really surprised when Phil Scott endorsed him, although some folks are pretty surprised that Phil Scott has been spending a lot of his own campaign money standing there with John Rogers saying, "I endorse John, he's the man." No one was all that surprised when Jim Douglas, former governor, went for John Rogers. Jim is he will endorse pretty much any sort of good middle of the road and almost all Republican candidates. But Peter Shumlin, a Democrat, and there's a Democrat running in this race. And Peter Shumlin, for years, really, the leader of the Vermont Democratic Party, certainly the electoral leader, as a governor, as a Senate pro tem, a significant spokesperson, fundraiser for the Democratic Party. And here he is saying, actually, I'm going to back John Rogers. Paul, could you possibly, you wrote the story, you broke the story in this yesterday. Could you possibly pull up the quote that Peter Shumlin?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to just give me a quick second, I can pull it right up.
Okay, well, you let me know when you got it.
Sure.
And so I can't remember the last time that a Democrat, former governor, backed a Republican for lieutenant governor when there was an actual incumbent Democratic lieutenant governor. So what's this all about?
If it's ever happened, right?
Yeah, it's very possible that it's never happened.
So I do have the comment
Sure.
right here. This is what Peter Shumlin wrote. He wrote, "I have worked with John Rogers for many years. I trust John, and I know that he has the best interests of Vermonters at heart." He kept it pretty short and sweet compared to the other two. I do want to point that out. It is a little
Okay. But the main thing is he endorsed him.
Yes.
And so why would he do this? Well, I think the real answer, 2 words, David Zuckerman. And if you want to add 2 more words to that, David Zuckerman, the progressive. Sure, David Zuckerman was elected as a Democrat. He's running as a Democrat, but his roots are pure Bernie. He is a progressive. He's been supported by the Progressive Caucus, by the Progressive Party. And I think what we're looking at here, actually, before we get into what I think, Paul, I want to know what you think. And also, folks, I want you to comment on what do you think is going on that Peter Shumlin has endorsed John Rogers?
Well, I think the big thing is, to have the bipartisan support at this point in the election season, what that means is fairly obvious. It does sound like there are factions of the former Democratic Party, whatever you want to call the Democratic Party of the Bill Clinton era, the Obama era, that is starting to fraction, right? You're starting to see, John is a perfect example of somebody who obviously, just got up and said, all right, I don't even want to be in this party anymore.
Right.
And then you take somebody like Peter Shumlin, who maybe he isn't willing to go that far and say, I don't want to be in the party anymore. But he is willing to say, I'll support a Republican, even with Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, by the way. Put that in perspective.
Wow.
I know, I think it means something. I don't know.
So why would he do this?
Well, I think that you have the Vermont establishment elite, if you will, if that's even the right phrase. The same group of people that was trying to get Kitty Toll elected a few years ago. They don't want Zuckerman to be the next governor of Vermont. They don't want him to be lieutenant governor, and they don't want him to be the next governor of Vermont because they don't want the Progressive Party to overtake the state entirely. And as we're seeing in the State House as it is now, the progressives do have a fairly large voice within the Democratic supermajority, which is interesting because you have the progressives and then the Democrats, but they're really, a lot of people say they're all part of like one big coalition, which isn't exactly true.
No.
More or less. It can be true, and often they'll go with each other. I see the Progressive Party being a little bit more of like that college kid rebellious type mentality, as opposed to the Democratic Party, which is like a little bit more, I don't want to say deceitful, but maybe that's the right word. I mean, at least the progressives are out in the open about what they want to do. I think the Democratic Party is a little bit more quiet about how they go about things. Would you disagree with me on that, Guy?
Well, when you said the rebellious college student, I would say that Vermont is full of rebellious college students from the 60s.
Yes.
And the 70s, who have kind of stayed that way. In fact, that's one of the reasons they moved to Vermont, is that's really kind of their core identity. And those are the Bernie folks and David Zuckerman and those guys. So, I think what we have is a supermajority that is not in lockstep on all things. They divided over the homeless last year. Shall we keep funding the homeless?
That's right.
And some senators and House members said, absolutely, got to keep doing it. Mostly the progressive way. And whereas a lot of the more middle-of-the-road Democrats, such as they are in Vermont, said, no, not going to really go with that. And I think another reason why Peter Shumlin, this is just speculation, Paul, okay, but might have to do with how the EB5 scandal shakes out. For those of you, I was at a press conference where Peter Shumlin, this was before that whole scandal of money being taken from investors in the Northeast Kingdom, the EB5 scandal. Before that really broke, he could not say enough good about that investment program, the whole EB5 thing, especially that great project that's being done up in the Northeast Kingdom. Peter Shumlin could speak very enthusiastically about things when he wanted to, and that was one of those days. And then, it seemed that they did a massive investigation, and it may be that the administration, in fact, possibly both administrations, were not always terribly forthcoming and protective of those investors. They were, there may be a little bit of culpability there. And so if I were Peter Shumlin, I'd be thinking, what can I do to get in the good graces of the Scott administration? Well, this couldn't hurt. So this will protect my legacy and perhaps a few other things as well. Now that, folks, that's just me speculating. I think it really is more like he's looking at the future. He's looking at 2026 and run for governor. And whoever he has in mind, he does not have in mind
Zuckerman.
a Prague like David Zuckerman.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's an interesting thing. And there's also no doubt that a lot of big money from the Burlington area has come in behind Rogers. He spent a lot of money this year,
Yeah.
in the last month or so. Outspent Zuckerman in the last month. I have talked to some people who have seen some polls who say it's close. Talked to another person, a sitting senator, Republican senator, saying it's close. Maybe he thinks maybe a little bit more Zuckerman's way, but going to be close. And I don't think we know. I think someone would have to be able to really read the tea leaves of just how upset are the voters over the property tax, over the Affordable Heating Act, over all of the increasing homelessness and the lack of decent housing and the taxation and everything that has happened here on this legislature's watch. And how much are they getting ready to say time to clean house? They certainly didn't in the Democratic primary. That's a fact. Will they in the general election? I don't know.
Yeah, and we do have some comments, Guy, and I want to get to them. Judith McLaughlin, she writes, "These are strange times. Strange times indeed." Right?
Yes.
I mean, kind of what I was just saying. It's like you have this complete, I don't know about 360 happening, but kind of like a 180 more so than in the state with politics. It seems like even with, like I say, Trump at the top of the ticket, you have a former Democratic governor starting to say go vote for Republicans, right? I mean, that's kind of like, whoa, right? Are people starting to like open their eyes a little bit? And one of the most interesting things that I keep seeing, and this is what Zuckerman keeps doing too. This is what's so beautiful about Shumlin's endorsement, is he keeps trying to paint Rogers into the Trump corner, right? Like, how could you be part of this party? Like, if you watch all the debates, that's like all John that he tries to say about John. How could you be part of this party? Who are you going to vote for president? And John still says, I'm not voting for Trump. I'm not voting for Kamala. I'm going to go third party. Yeah. I think we have big problems in the primary. He's explained that, a lot, and he keeps trying to get Rogers with it, and I don't know. It seems to me that a lot of people out there, they're like, it doesn't really matter. They doesn't seem to matter to a lot of folks. That
and as well, it shouldn't in Vermont. Because really, if Trump gets elected, it's not going to change how people stand up in the House and Senate and vote.
No, and
they may change some funding. They may have to accommodate federal law a little bit, but it's not going to change. All those the big things that the supermajority is pushing, they're going to push those anyway.
Maybe even harder.
Maybe.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see this kind of happening. Jerry Zeeler, he writes, Zuckerman, the Republican Party has gone off the rails. So kind of to the point of what we're talking about is that Zuckerman keeps trying to just like drill this point home, but I don't think it's landing with anybody. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But.
Well, with Phil Scott at the center and the absolute political control of the Republican Party now, where even, this was amazing. I think it was Mike Belosky who wrote the story, Paul. Even Greg Thayer,
Yeah.
MAGA Republican, ran for lieutenant governor. Lost, but Greg is about as MAGA as they come. And he comes out, he actually bought an ad in the Chronicle saying, vote Phil Scott. And yeah, vote for Trump and vote for Gerald Malloy, but vote Phil Scott because he's the only thing standing in the way of the supermajority. And I would expect to hear that from Representative Jim Harrison and John Rogers and a lot of other people. I wouldn't expect to hear that from Greg Thayer.
No, I wouldn't either.
And yet, so what you're seeing is that it's all sort of the endorsements and the political control and support, if you will, is all flowing to Phil Scott. And how can anyone, Zuckerman, et cetera, really look at Phil Scott and say, boy, this guy's a real MAGA type?
Yeah.
Because, whenever I ask him at the press conferences about anything to do with Donald Trump, he immediately gets this pained look on his face and he says, what we need in this country is more political civility and less division. And this is something Phil Scott feels very strongly. He is no fan of Donald Trump. And how anyone can try to paint him that way it's just ludicrous.
It's incorrect. Yeah, and to try to do that to Rogers too, it really doesn't make any sense. And as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't really seem to be working. And actually, that kind of draws a bigger parallel when you look at the entire political races, all of the races happening across the country right now. You see this, even the presidential election. It's like there's not a whole lot of a campaign for the Democratic Party other than Donald Trump is bad, right? That seems to be, or even that he's Hitler or that he's a fascist and he's gonna, put his political opponents in jail, right? That's what they keep saying. Meanwhile, nothing about the economy, nothing about the homelessness, nothing about the endless wars or the energy prices or food prices, the border, none of these things that actually matter. It just shows you, in my opinion, it shows you where the Democratic Party, where their priorities are at least nationally. And, that's one of the big things that I do struggle to comprehend, not to make this, I want to make this point because what I see in Montpelier with the Jill Krasinski's, the Phil Baruths,
this is the Speaker of the House,
and the Senate, and then a lot of their people within the supermajority. What you're seeing is a lot of like stonewalling, no conversations being had. Jay Hooper has talked about this extensively with us, how they behave, how they operate, and how they try to control the conversation, and really how they go into the session with an agenda. Like they know where things are going before they even get started. I don't know, take my father and my grandfather, for example. They see the problems here in Vermont, and they don't draw the comparison or parallel to Kamala Harris. And that's from my perspective, right? Like when I'm looking at the Democratic Party and the just dysfunction of their existence here in the state, I look at Kamala Harris and I see her as the figurehead of the whole party ultimately, not just in Vermont, but the whole country, right? So, and that's exactly what she is, right? Yeah. She's not duly elected, by the way. It's installed. Once again, no conversation about it, secrecy, privacy, agenda. How long have they had this planned? Nobody knows, right?
Well, they did have some sort of straw where the state delegations came together and said, yes, we endorse your pick for Kamala.
Well, wasn't even that as simple as some of Vermont's delegation, for example. I'm pretty sure we reported on this. Half of them weren't even there for the meeting. They just texted, sure, so we support Kamala. It was like a Zoom call, in college or something. Yeah. It's what a joke. It was not a serious debate.
There were no other candidates. It was, kind of looked like a rubber stamp.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I just don't understand how they don't draw the comparison to the national candidate, Kamala Harris, right? And the big thing is, all they're talking about is, Trump wants to take away abortion rights, right? verifiably false.
He
right?
doesn't.
He doesn't. Even to the point where some conservatives are upset with how,
Yeah.
right? I mean, even myself.
He's losing some of the pro-life
Exactly.
conservatives.
So it's like they're saying he wants to take away abortion rights. Well, it's completely false. It's demonstrably false. You can see this. And I just heard J.D. Vance talking about this with Joe Rogan. I don't know if you've seen that yet, Guy.
Not the Vance.
Really good, folks. Go check it out if you haven't already. But he's saying, you look at places like Europe and other parts of the world, but Europe specifically, he was talking about how they've removed it from policy. And this is the conversation, from policy, from voting, from the election season, simply because of how polarizing of an issue it is on both sides of the political spectrum, by the way. So Trump believes what he's trying to do is remove that. And it's obviously very hard for us to go through as a nation because we're so used to it being this top issue because that's what's been, what do they call it, the Overton window. That's what's been in the space for so long. But Trump's trying to remove that and give it back to the states to make these decisions, right? So, like, I mean, I ran for office. This is what's funny about this conversation because it parallels to the state, too. I ran for state senate in 2022, and one of the big talking points was Article 22, the Proposition 5, which was the amendment to enshrine reproductive liberty rights in the state's constitution up to the day of birth, if you can find a doctor to do it. That's the law in Vermont. The people voted, well, actually, the legislature voted on it, 2/3 majority, and then the people of the state, twice, and then the people of the state voted on it. That's the law here. It's going to be pretty hard to change that.
Right.
And what they're trying to do is accomplish that throughout the entire country. And Trump keeps saying, all the legal scholars think that this is a genius move. And it is a genius move because hopefully in 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, we're not talking about this issue every 4 years. The states decide what they want to do, and then we're not arguing about this anymore. So you keep seeing them throwing this issue at candidates in Vermont that are running for the state legislature. For example, Andrea Murray and all the candidates in Windsor County, they do the debate. I think it was, I don't remember where the debate was, but the first question was, who do you support for president? And then the next conversation was abortion rights, and then climate change, right?
Right.
So you just see this.
I was in Vermont Law School in South Royalton.
That was the one.
You would figure, of all places, they might have a nuanced discussion of the issues. Nope. Trump, abortion, climate. That's all we want to know about.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, well, what about property tax increases?
Oh, yeah, that.
Affordable heat, affording just to heat your house.
Right.
And
affordable heat.
Truly affordable heat.
Not what they want to do, which is the opposite of that.
Once again, the crime, the northern border, right? Like all these real issues. But crickets, like same from Zuckerman. I don't see him talking about anything of substance. I just don't see it. I mean, that's my opinion. But I'm kind of at a loss with the state of Vermont's politics. I don't understand how some of the vision that they have, how they don't see the bigger picture. And I don't know if that's because of a lack of perspective, if we just live in a big bubble here. I don't know, Guy. What do you think it is?
We do live in a bubble. We live in a. It's not the bubble that I would choose, but yes, we live in a political bubble here that is, shall we say, not the majority of the rest of the country. You mentioned the media.
Sure.
And one of the things that's struck me, you mentioned Joe Rogan in particular.
Yeah.
I think 12 hours after his one-on-one interview with Donald Trump went on X or whatever it was, YouTube, wherever it is, 19 million views. And I'm not sure what 60 Minutes gets, but I don't think they get 20 million. So I think what we're looking at is that interview is just one more proof that the media landscape is really, really changing. And it's no surprise to me that Elon Musk is on the Trump team, because Elon Musk is all about, among other things, freedom of speech, does not like censorship and control. And what we had, and we can all remember this from 20 and 22, is we had, I was canceled off of Facebook for a while for some things that I said. My wife was canceled off of
I was.
Facebook. You were?
Oh, I was kicked off
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. And that's just not happening as much now because there's this outlet where they actually let people say what they want to say. And I've gotten some grief this week for running a column by a Orange Man Bad, a guy named John Bassange, retired educator from South Burlington, really taking Trump apart on gender things. And a bunch of comments saying, Guy, why did you run this guy? Why did you even give this guy the space? And my answer is, essentially, we're not afraid of ideas. We think it's okay for people to express their ideas, and then they can be judged in the arena of public opinion, which, in fact, he was. There were an awful lot of comments saying, A, B, C, this is why this guy is out to lunch, according to the commenters. So we can't be afraid of that.
No.
There's another very close to home Vermont censorship thing where just the way Elon Musk has basically opened up a window, Front Porch Forum, the neighbor-to-neighbor posting, which is a terrible censor of anything of most conservative talking points. Certainly on climate, on COVID, you can't say certain things. And in fact, if you even mention the Vermont Daily Chronicle or Rob Roper, your post gets canceled. Just mention it.
I didn't know that.
Yes. If you say,
What?
you say those three magic words, Vermont Daily Chronicle, and you are kicked off the front porch, buddy. So,
I'm sorry, I'm grimacing because I'm having some knee issues here today, folks. Sorry, Guy, I didn't mean to just interrupt you.
oh, I thought you were like, I can't believe this. But no, it's your football knee. You were scoring the winning touchdown for Northfield High, and All-American linebacker
right.
hit you, and you stiff-armed him, but darn it, you wrenched your knee, and it's been bad ever since. Isn't that it?
That's the story. That is the story. No, I don't know what's going on. I'm just having a little ache lately.
Okay, well,
I did not know that, though, Guy.
get used to it, bro.
Well, I didn't know that, though, that we've been banned from Front Porch Forum,
Yeah,
Guy.
absolutely. And just literally the very mention of those three words in sequence from
Wow.
our Daily Chronicle. You're off. So, Don Koch, state Senate candidate from Barrie, was also, he mentioned something about, climate change. And, no, we can't have that. That violates our community standards because you said the wrong thing about climate change.
I saw that.
Yeah. So what does Don Koch do? In a way, he pulls an Elon Musk. Not that he buys his own, but he found a competitor. There's a neighbors posting service, very much like Front Porch Forum, called Nextdoor. And you can actually get on Nextdoor, and for now anyway, they'll let you say whatever you want about climate change. And you don't get banned.
Dinged.
Yes. And so, okay, one less person on Front Porch Forum, one more person on Nextdoor. And that is the way a free media in a free society should work. Rather than some sort of cartel, media cartel, where we decide what all the rules are. And we don't need that.
Guy, I just want to make a quick point, too, if you don't mind, going back to the Rogan-Trump interview, J.D. Vance. So he did offer Kamala Harris to come do an interview also, and he's had that as an open invitation all election season. And I see after Trump did his, she gave her response, and she tried to set the parameters, right? So he had to travel, and it was only going to be an hour long, and it sounded like they wanted to have a lot of control of the interview.
Of course.
And the point is, it
She's
reminds
used to that.
Well, of course she's used to that, but it kind of reminds me of even with what Jay Hooper has told us about meeting with leadership and trying to have those conversations and sit down across the table, and they make it kind of challenging. It even kind of reminds me of Guy. You're gonna be maybe you're gonna have to test this one out, but it kind of reminds me of like when I was dating in school. You know,
Where's the plug?
Yeah, where's the plug? It reminds me of when I was dating in school, right? Like a lot of girls at the University of Vermont, for example, were fairly left-leaning, more so.
Okay.
And a lot of the times you'd like get to know somebody and you'd try to like set up a date, and then there's like be all these hoops you had to jump through to try to get the actual date set up, right? And you're just like, at a certain point, you're like,
They don't want to waste their time with some Trump troglodyte.
Well, exactly. It's same kind of idea. It's like she's not going to go sit down and talk with Joe Rogan unless she gets to make. Do you see what I mean?
That's good, Paul.
I hope you like that one. Yeah.
All the guys
I wasn't sure where I was going.
Preach it,
I wasn't sure where I was going with that one.
No,
But I wanted,
that's pretty good.
okay.
And speaking of Trump, you had a interesting experience last weekend.
I did.
I went to one Trump rally years ago, and I must say it was quite an interesting, eye-opening experience. But you went to your first one. And
I did.
Tell us about that.
Well, I got to say, I think I picked probably the best one you possibly could have attended. MAGA rally in NYC, Madison Square Garden.
Oh, the Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. I had the idea, it came up that he was going to be there. And I mean, I've been kind of hoping all summer to maybe make one in New Hampshire or something, but he hasn't done one up this far. So I said, okay, I'll just kind of like, maybe someone will pop up. And then I saw this one, I said, oh, I'm definitely going. So I signed up, and I left early in the morning on the 27th, and I got down to New York City. I was there by like, I don't know, 11 o'clock, and parked the car, and got in line. We were in line by noon, and we were quite literally the first people denied entry into Madison Square Garden.
Oh.
We just barely didn't make it. And for folks out there wondering how tight was it, well, only 20,000 people could get into the actual building itself, and there was 200,000 people outside Madison Square Garden. That includes me. And I was the first. We were the first couple of people to get cut off.
Wow.
We were pretty heartbroken. We were pretty like what, you know? But honestly, like I've said, and I wrote an article about my experience. You know, it was just as cool to be there, right outside with all those people. We could still hear the speakers and see them on the screens. You could hear the crowd inside. Everybody was part of it. I think they did a good job at that, all things considered. Obviously would have loved to have been in the building, but it was still incredible to be outside New York City, just hearing USA, USA bouncing off the skyline of the world's, the United States' most famous city. So that was really cool. And just to be surrounded, by the way.
Were you able to like watch it on screens outside?
Yeah,
or anything?
You could hear and see everything going on very clearly. Like they had it totally set up like they would for an inauguration or something, like where they had just had so much viewing capacity no matter where you were. So we still got like pretty good view of everything, and we got to hear all the speakers firsthand, and it was just so crazy. The thing too, like what we're told, right, coming out of that, it's this racist event. It was so racist. Everything, it was just a bunch of racism essentially, and it's like
New York Times and everyone saying fascist, racist.
Yeah, fascist, racist. I mean, it's really crazy. Like it literally wasn't that at all. I spent most of the afternoon with an Indian gentleman who can't even vote. He just thinks that Trump is awesome. Very intelligent. Had lots of conversations with him about all of just a lot of different things. And not just them, but I met Germans in line that really excited about Trump, and just this vast majority of people that I saw. They say he's like Hitler, right? Oh, he's Hitler. He's a Nazi. And I saw literally thousands of people that were Jewish there, wearing merch that says Jewish Voices for Trump, and just all in. And it was just such a conglomeration. It was so many different groups of people.
Gee, maybe because he's the only major figure who really supports Israel. Could it be?
Who at least openly is and I will say, Speaker Mike Johnson did make a comment, Trump is the most pro-Israel president there's ever been. There was a handful of things like that. But
pretty close. The
point is, everybody wants there to be this peace on earth, like kumbaya, but if Trump's doing that, he's not going to get any credit for it. And in fact, he's going to be called a racist, actually. He's racist, even though he didn't even make the racist joke. It was a comedian who, admittedly, Do you know the one I'm referring to?
Oh, yeah.
Admittedly,
obviously a very, very tasteless joke.
it just wasn't meant for that.
Yeah.
But if that's what everybody wants
Fortunately,
to...
Joe Biden followed up with a good ka-ching of his own.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But
You know, and I gather RFK was there?
RFK was there. Elon
Okay.
Musk was there. Obviously, J.D. Vance. Hulk Hogan was there. Dana White was there.
The reason I bring up him, I bring up Kennedy, is, Paul, you may or may not remember, but back in August, before the primary, you took a photo of the Kennedy for Vermont campaign,
Yes.
turning in their petitions, and boy, they moved heaven and earth.
Yes, they did.
And they were so proud. And there's this great picture of Victoria Dubin Master, the Kennedy captain, they called her, taking pictures. You took a picture of her taking a picture of the petitions being handed in.
Yeah.
And just this morning, she sent an op-ed to the Chronicle, which we published. And I would encourage folks to take a look at that. This is Dr. Victoria Dubin Master, chiropractor. And she said, as we approach Election Day, I ask you, why is a vote for Kennedy a vote for Kamala Harris? So here she was, you know, she was getting Kennedy on the ballot, but this was before he endorsed Trump. And she said, boy, there's no doubt, many of us worked hard to get the word out. Times it felt like it was a losing battle. And there was definitely some frustration when he endorsed Trump.
Yeah.
But what she is saying for all of the Kennedy people is that Bobby Kennedy has a real place in this administration, whereas the Democratic Party absolutely kicked him to the curb. The same way, by the way, they did to Bernie Sanders. Trump said, I want you under my tent. You can do a lot of good. You can help make America healthy again. And so I would encourage folks to give a read to that. And some people used to think, maybe still do think, that Trump is all about Trump. All he cares about is himself. Well, if that were the case, why would he surround himself with powerful, strong individuals like Elon Musk and Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, Tucker Carlson, all people who have made their own way, and they didn't need anyone's party coattails. They didn't need anyone's coattails for anything. In fact, they've been bucking the system, all of them.
That's
ever
right.
Since.
That's a good point.
But he said, I'm not intimidated by you. I welcome you in. In fact, and then I look at Biden and Harris, who really have never, either of them have ever really presented new ideas. They've all been basically just sort of said, whatever's, no new ideas, okay? And I've got to wonder if they are victims, the Democratic Party this year is a victim of its own success. They had two living two-term presidents, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and of course in America, ever since FDR, you cannot run for more than 2 terms as president. So part of me thinks that the reason there are party-minded stiffs running for president, now 2 of them in a row, is because the real leaders, and that would be the Clinton camp and the Obama camp.
And whatever money is behind them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the successful 2-term presidents and their legacy and all that stuff and their people, they don't want a Democrat version of Trump. They don't want a Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, maybe, going off on his own. They don't want some Dean Phillips from Minnesota, someone who basically says, I've got ideas here, and I'm a Democrat, proud to be a Democrat, but not the party needs to change. They are not receptive to that message. And I think until they are, they're going to have stiffs because they're afraid of anyone but stiffs running for president. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense. In all honesty, I think when you look at once again down ballot in the Democratic Party, it's the same idea. You know, you have some kind of intelligent people at the very, very top, like the Chuck Schumers of the world, for example,
Right.
calling a lot of the shots with maybe Obama and the Clintons somewhere in the background there, and all of their circle, if you will, the money that is behind them. And then down ballot, you know, right down into the state of Vermont, right? I mean, another thing, sorry, Jay Hooper, to bring you back up again, but another thing Jay said to us at one point was that whole, what was it, the flavored tobacco ban.
Oh, right.
He's like, what does that really have to do with anything happening in Vermont? It doesn't.
Yeah.
That is like some sort of Chuck Schumer agenda item.
It's Ginny Lyon's pet project.
Yeah, like there's something else that has nothing to do with what's going on here. So kind of to weave back, if you will, we just used the weave.
Yeah.
It kind of comes back to the state too. You know, like how does this all connect to the state of Vermont? And you know, we were talking about Shumlin, right? And you said he's kind of a Clinton era Democrat.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I don't really quite remember what that was like in the state. So like when you had Clinton era Democrats and even Obama era, early Obama, like what was the difference?
Well, they weren't progs.
So can you explain that a little bit to me, Guy, as a young little fella who doesn't really know much about this? Because I really don't.
Think in terms of, rather than, for example, in Vermont, totally changing the criminal justice system to where there's no bail and the prison is just a last resort for only the most violent. That's the progressive thing that has basically taken over Burlington because George Soros has supported Sarah George. And that is a more progressive view. A more democratic view is, well, maybe the sentences aren't so long. Maybe we're not quite lock them up and throw away the key. We need some more services. We need to teach them teach them skills when they're in college. Reform rather than what almost sometimes looks like revolution.
Sure.
Just let it all burn down, baby. We're going to it's all going to fall apart and we're going to rebuild it in some image of some utopian image. That would be more the progressive tendency. The Democrats are more like, oh, let's just make it better and make it work a little better for people. The homeless thing, they would say, well, let's maybe support some shelters. Let's try to get them some help with their problems that got them there. But the idea of housing is a human right, and therefore they need to be housed, no questions asked, now and forevermore, amen, which is kind of the progressive way. No, the Democrats wouldn't go that far.
So bringing this kind of back to where we started, even in conversation, talking about the lieutenant governor's race, right? So you see Shumlin endorsing somebody like John Rogers.
In that sense,
and there's more Democrat support. I mean,
I think that's right. And remember, Rogers and Shummy worked together.
That's right.
As legislators.
Democrats.
So yes, John was probably a little more conservative and very outspoken. Of course, so was Peter Shumlin. So their personalities in some ways are quite a bit alike. What do we have do we have any comments, Paul?
Yeah, we do. We have a couple comments I think we should definitely read. Kathy writes, bingo, Guy, and I think she must have been referring to when you were talking about Obama/Clinton's behind the scenes, not really wanting to give control of the presidency. I think that's 100% what's going on, by the way. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
Jerry Zeller writes, Trump is like Elon. They only want the best people on their team, and they make their people greater by the trust they give them to go with their ideas as well. Bipartisanship. I think that's true. And Big Siege writes, break off a piece of your tinfoil hat, Paul, for Guy. And I think they're just messing around. They're just kidding. It must have been in reference to what you were talking about. And Big Siege, maybe you can clarify what you're talking about there, and maybe, I don't tinfoil hat. Like, what are you talking about? I don't wear a tinfoil hat. I wear a MAGA hat. This is a MAGA hat. I don't know.
Well, ask him to clarify.
Clarify if you wouldn't mind.
Love to discuss this.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Guy. I think just kind of drawing it all together here, right? I mean, this is a podcast today where we're obviously talking about the elections because they are literally on Tuesday.
And people's feelings are obviously getting wound up in this, and one of the signs that we're seeing of this is, someone just apparently really crossed the line up in Grand Isle County.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
There's Colonel Mike Morgan, I believe Air Guard, I think. Mike Morgan is a House member for Grand Isle and West Milton, and he reported on his Facebook page that somebody messed with his, I'll just read what he wrote. He said, as most of you know, I travel the area a lot. He's in a contested campaign, right? Sadly, it is apparent that someone tampered with my truck in those travels. As a result, last night I experienced a catastrophic failure with my vehicle. If anyone has seen any suspicious activity involving my truck, I would appreciate you reaching out to me. I have notified local authorities. I'm glad that my wife, children, or grandchildren were not with me in the vehicle, as greater harm could have occurred. Thank you, Mike Morgan. And what I have heard today through some party officials is that someone loosened the lug nuts on one of his tires. Didn't take the wheel off completely, just loosened them up enough so that if he's traveling down the road, it can come off and cause a catastrophic accident. Well, not an accident, obviously, really a malicious act. And I just, who would do such a thing? I suppose it's possible that it didn't have anything to do with the campaign. But you gotta wonder. Another example of this, of just sort of really egregious behavior, not dangerous, and maybe not that consequential, but there is an appointed election official for the town of Braintree. We wrote a story about this week, who went to Front Porch Forum, where they gladly printed, that she pulled up 54 yard signs, all but like a handful of them Republicans. And she said, well, they were in the public right of way, as frankly most political signs are in some sort of right of way. But she just very sort of brazenly said, yeah, I pulled them up, and kind of like, well, what are you going to do about it? And it just, I don't really know what effect that will have. I do know that in Orange County, where Braintree is located, that there's a Senate race. Mark McDonald, longtime incumbent Democrat, and Larry Hart, a strong first time running for state senate, I believe. And he's thought to have, a pretty good opportunity to pull out an upset. And yet, there's a bunch of heart signs that, well, they're not there anymore. And will that affect the election? Who knows? What do signs do anyway?
Well, they don't vote, that's for sure. as everybody always says, lawn signs don't vote.
Yeah.
The classic saying.
Right.
But
maybe it'll even have a boomerang effect.
That's true
maybe
too.
someone will say, "Look, I'm going to vote for the guy who got so targeted by the dirty politics." So I don't really know. So you were pretty surprised by up close and personal, that you just didn't see any of this awful fascism or racism. No brown shirts, no one sig hollering,
no, none of that. No.
Wow, imagine that.
No, it was a pretty eye-opening. I didn't expect to be honest.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to at all. I just didn't expect to be as overwhelmed by truly what felt like a group of people that were there for peace and love, which might sound ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that's what it was about. It was about peace. And people want to make him out to be this violent, oppressive figure. I didn't trust him for a while, and I still am not like, oh, he's the greatest person ever. He's never done, that's not how I feel about him at all. But he's begun to take on and address some of the issues using people that he trusts, by the way, like Elon, like RFK, like Tucker. I mean, to me, Tucker Carlson and RFK Jr., those two people right there are like my two, if I could be like somebody someday, those guys are the guys, right? That's pretty incredible that they're out there campaigning with Donald Trump. And I got to see them. So I guess that's kind of where my mind is at. And I think that just the grouping of people there, it's just, honestly, Guy, what it really taught me is just how divided this country actually is. And I don't think it's because of him specifically. I think it is a lot to do with the fake news. I really think that the fake news, Mockingbird media, constantly repeating lies over and over and over again.
Mockingbird media.
The Mockingbird media.
Never heard that, Paul.
Well, it's a kind of a joke on the phrase Operation Mockingbird, which is a CIA project to basically infiltrate all of the media throughout the country,
wow.
which has been going on since really the 1960s and probably before that. But the point is, it's like I think people think that Trump is like racist and angry and but he's not, and his supporters aren't. And when you see that in person, even as somebody who kind of knows that because of what I've seen online and what I've endured the past 4 years, it's like, it's still like, holy cow, like there is just such a split in this country between people that see things clearly. Like the vaccines, the COVID incident, the weather modification, geoengineering. I mean, the number of conversations with people I had about weather modification and geoengineering there. It's like, wow, like, what am I doing? Like, what is going on? Like, is this a dream? Like, no, people are awake, man. And it's exciting. It's encouraging. And I think that we need more of it. So I just don't, it does really, they say that the race is close, and it's really close, and that's what the polls are saying. It's like, I just have such a hard time believing that it could be that close. I don't know.
Well, is that, do we think that because we're just so convinced that our guy's the right guy?
I think I'm so convinced that our guy's the right guy, and I could admit that.
So there's a bit of a bubble there.
Of course there is.
Yeah.
But I guess my point is like, once you're in the bubble and you see it, like even as somebody that's liberal, it's like, I don't even feel sorry that Trump's going to win. Like, this is going to be better for you. Like that's kind of my opinion. I mean, maybe that's just my opinion. But it's like, no, this is going to be better for everybody.
Yeah.
But that's just really hard, I think, for others to see. And maybe, who knows, maybe I'm wrong, Guy. Maybe I'm wrong.
We will find out. I cannot imagine if somehow Trump turned into, the monster that they say he is. What Tucker Carlson, one of the most influential media people with conservatives, with his base, Elon Musk, who only owns the biggest social media platform,
and spaceship company.
Yeah, and RFK, what they would say.
Yeah,
they would go nuts. They would go ballistic, and Trump's base would just absolutely crumble.
Yeah.
So I just can't see that happening. I mean, first of all, I don't think he wants to do that anyway. I think that's all it's a fabrication. But yeah, I don't think that those three really, really smart guys have been gulled and have mistakenly hitched their wagon to the wrong star. I think they're onto something.
I do too. And I have a comment here from Judith McLaughlin. She writes, Paul, so glad you went. You have no idea how refreshing it is to hear this from someone younger. I want you to know, pretty much everybody I saw there was under the age of 35. I mean, maybe 40 is a better number to give you, but like most of the people that I was standing there talking with were younger people. I think maybe you got to think like going to a rally is kind of exhausting. We're standing all day, so kudos to the older folks that can do it, because even I was exhausted. Like seriously, I mean, the next day I was so tired. But point is there's a vast. I think that Trump is so popular among Gen Z, which I don't know if I'm Gen Z or not. Guy, do you know the break on that?
No.
I don't think I am, but some people say I might be.
You have to be born after turn of the century? Is that what that is?
I think, but it might be like 2003 or something.
Okay.
I was born in 1999, in case anyone was wondering. But Gen Z loves him, and I think it's because of the internet, right? You go back to the media landscape.
Yeah.
People are not watching, my age, we're not watching CBS News. We're not watching
60 Minutes.
We're not watching 60 Minutes. We're not watching NBC. You know, we're watching Aiden Ross stream with Trump for 2.5 hours. Aiden Ross, see, guy, yeah, but
I'm
that's
still getting used to Theo Vaughn.
well, that's what I mean. So, but Theo's even different. Like Theo sits down and records his shows. Aiden Ross, like he goes on for hours, and it's like you know, them playing video games together and like driving around. It's so stupid, but it's like Trump went and did that. And people that are, you know, the age.
Really?
Oh yeah, the people that are aged like 10 through literally people aged 10 through 30, they watch that. So it's like.
Aiden Ross.
Aiden Ross, I'll send it to you. Very funny.
Something new every day.
They sat down and listened to. Actually, Aiden Ross gave him a Cybertruck with an image of Trump on it, you know, doing the fight, you know. And then they sat in the Cybertruck and listened to Frank Sinatra and the Beach Boys together in the car.
A Cybertruck?
That's Elon's electric vehicle.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Well, and that.
You're losing me here.
I know, it's a lot.
I'm just running after you with my hands waving as you head off into.
Well, but see, what I'm getting at though is that Trump is so good at this, right? And I think a lot of it. Some people say it's, and Trump says it himself, is, you know, his son Barron is 18 and he's a freshman at NYU, and apparently Barron is in the background telling him, "Hey, Dad, go on this podcast."
Theo Vaughn.
Go on.
Mentioned.
Yeah,
he loves Theo
my
Vaughn.
son told me to go on Theo Vaughn.
Yeah.
My son told me to go on Rogan. My son told me, and I think Trump, being an older gentleman, you know, he didn't know a lot about the vaccines, for example.
Right.
He doesn't know a lot about geoengineering, for example. He's been very out in the open. I know nothing about government corruption in Washington. All of a sudden, I was just president of the United States. He has said I didn't know who to trust, who you couldn't. Right. And I guess what I'm getting at is like the old world that was in politics and media has completely changed. And I will say this. I have one friend, professor, mentor of mine, who is very adamant, kind of saying, you know, hey, you know, Trump's still, you know, hey, Trump's, you know, part of the, he did rise in the, you know, the corporate structure, and, you know, like, you know, if there was a group of people that really wanted him dead, he would probably be dead, and maybe you don't trust it so much. Part of me understands that. Part of me agrees. We don't want to put our faith in the wrong character. We don't want to put all of our faith in this one thing. Because, you know, oh, Trump's going to fix it all. Don't worry about anything. You know, Trump's got it, guys.
That's,
you know, and that's not where I'm at.
Yeah, even he would say no.
No, I think he would too. I think he would too. But I do see a growing, you know, I hope he wins, but we got a lot of work to do, folks.
You bet.
And
with that,
sure.
It's 5 o'clock.
I know.
Paul, boy, how time flies.
I know.
I do think we hit all the major points that we wanted to discuss. Folks, if we missed a few, we'll try to get it next time. Hey, tune in. What, 7:30, Paul? When are we going to be on the air?
I think 7:30. Yeah, 7:30.
Yeah.
We'll go as long as we need.
So assuming we can use this studio, and if we can't, we'll be sitting in my man cave with Paul's phone.
No,
talking about it.
we'll set it up right if we have to.
You will see us 7:30 election night, and we're going to hang in there until all the certainly at least all the statewide results come in, and we'll have a real sense of who's our next lieutenant governor. Does Laura Sibilia have a chance to be the next Speaker of the House? Will there be a change in leadership in the Senate? We didn't even talk about that, but that, folks, that's not a crazy thought. 4 or 5 pickups in the Senate, and you could see not necessarily a Republican, but maybe some more centrist Democrats who are calling the shots in the Senate. Thanks for tuning in, and please go to VermontDailyChronicle.com. We publish 10 posts a day, every weekday. We are supported by you. The folks are sustaining subscribers who kick in 30 cents a day, Paul, is that what you figured?
30 cents a day, that's what I've
Yeah.
on the back of the envelope math.
Yeah, $9 a month, $180 a year. On our website, you can give right there. But we can't do this if you don't help us. So help us out. Thank you very much for giving us your time, and we will see you